Well, hey, good to see y'all. Welcome to training module number 8, Crisis Theory and Practice, Danger versus Opportunity. Starting at Roman numeral number 1, Sand and Rock. How an individual reacts to a crisis is going to have a lot to do with where they are in their faith and how solid that is. So, of course, the sand and rock refers to where you're going to build your house, on the rock that is Jesus, or sinking sand. And so one of the things we're going to learn in this module is that as we kind of break down the specific progression of what a crisis looks like, that an individual's faith is going to play a big role in how they react to it, in terms of even determining if it even is a crisis or not. So jumping to Roman numeral number 2, life, crisis, self-inventory. We're going to do that in class. It's where we're going to have the opportunity to kind of talk about crises that we've each individually gone through and how we handled it and how they progressed. So again, we're going to do that in class. Roman numeral 3, the course of a crisis. This is a really interesting module. If you look at page 157 in your blue book, it gives you a diagram of what it looks like to go through a crisis and the different steps. Okay, starting out, you start out in a state of equilibrium. This is before the crisis. Everything's balanced in your life. You have a natural rhythm to your life. Then the precipitating event happens. That's letter B. Okay, and so they immediately throw you into a sense of disequilibrium. Now, it's the individual's internal reaction to the event that ultimately determines whether a crisis will develop. So in other words, for example, I've got my in-laws, my mother and father-in-law have gone through a good number of crises in the last couple of years. They've gone through medical and financial crises both. But if you would meet with them, you'd have no idea they were going through that. They're just as joyous now as they ever were. They're great to hang out with. They're fun to be around. They're still generous of spirit and joyous. And that's because they have a very deep and abiding faith. And so to them, they know that God's going to provide. They've seen it many, many times before. And so this is no different. So they just know that this is another event to go through. And I would guess that they don't even define it as crisis because they know they're going to get through it. So your initial reaction to what this is going to have a lot to do with how you get through it. So if you define it as a crisis early on, that's exactly what it's going to be. And again, you see how your faith plays a huge role in how you view this. All right, letter C, disequilibrium. Basically, this is where your life is thrown off kilter, where you feel a threat to your values, your lifestyle, your relationships, your dreams. Things like this may start to cause an individual to withdraw, because you're in a state of fear. Focus note number 1, factors contributing to the intensity of a crisis. We're going to go over that in class in a little more detail. I'm not going to go over it now, but it kind of gives you some ideas of how the crisis can take on a deeper impact. Letter D, attempted, tried, and true solutions. Usually the next thing you do after you're going through a crisis is you kind of go in through your old toolbox, basically, and what have I done before and, in other events. Now, the difference being this is a major crisis. This isn't like anything typically you've probably dealt with before. And so your old tools will not work in this situation. Your old coping strategies are not going to work. So, so again, that's kind of the next natural step is to try those and then see they're not work. Well, they don't work. Then at that point, you basically have a fork in the road. Once you've tried your old coping mechanisms, they're not working. You can keep doing your old coping mechanisms and go deeper into frustration, maybe different obsessive behavior. Maybe you start overeating. Maybe you start binge buying, whatever. But you continue down this road of brokenness, and it's not working. But you're going to keep going down it because it's what you know. Or, let me back up. So if you go down that road of brokenness, it really kind of begins with denial, where you're trying to suppress a lot of the emotions that you're having. Now, for me personally, I identify with this. When my dad died, I basically shut down emotionally. I was kind of in denial. I just basically didn't want to feel anything. So I just completely shut everything down emotionally. Okay, so that was my coping mechanism, but it was continuing down a road of darkness and of brokenness. When I got divorced, it was the same idea where I just withdrew basically. I didn't really shut down my emotions necessarily, but I isolated myself. I didn't tell my family I was even going through a divorce. They didn't find out till long afterwards. So I've done both of the wrong things where I continued down the path of brokenness. And obviously, that's not where we want to be. We want to be at a point where we're gathering people around us. We're focusing on God. We're focusing on the healing that only He can provide. All right, letter G, the path to greater wholeness. This is the path, obviously, we want to go down. We want to, again, build a team around us, let people support us, let people love on us. That is going to be a huge factor in how quick you get through your healing. All right, Roman numeral 4, how Stephen ministers care for people in crisis. I'm just going to read this straight from the book. The most important factor in determining whether a person will grow toward greater wholeness in a crisis is having caring people who will support him or her in making the hard choices on the path to greater wholeness. All right, so it gives you an idea of your role, the importance of your role as a Stephen minister. All right, letter A, the importance of timing. When you when a crisis first happens, for lack of a better term, like energy is created. So what you do with that energy is going to be very important, or what the care receiver does with that energy is going to be very important. Basically, another thing that has to do with timing in terms of the dynamic of the sequence of events is how soon you get to minister to a care receiver. The sooner you start in with them, the better, because then they're going to start to feel some level of stability because they've got you meeting there with them every week. Okay. B, these are some important ways that the Stephen minister cares. B, take the crisis seriously. Remember that events affect people differently. Even if you think the care receiver is overreacting, take the crisis seriously. C, be consistent. During the disequilibrium of the crisis, it can seem as if the world no longer makes sense. Absolutely true. Care receivers may believe that they can't count on anything anymore. That's why it's extremely important for you as a Stephen minister to be very consistent. You're there every week, same time, ready to listen. That may be the little bit of consistency that helps keep them sane, for lack of a better word, during this time. D, help the care receiver stay in the crucible. Basically, you're making sure you're giving them good counsel, making them sure they're not doing the easy fix. They're not doing the quick way out. They're not doing the quick fix. Because when you're in a crisis and you're hurting, you want to feel better now, and so you're more apt to make poor decisions because you want to get things done quicker, because you want to feel better. But ultimately, the quick fixes are not the way to go. They're actually going to get you in a worse spot. E, be a triangle tipper. What that means is they say, imagine a triangle sitting on one point. How much would it take to tip it in one direction and get it moving forward? Not much. It's the same thing with your care receiver. Usually your supportive encouragement, presence, and well-timed nudge will be enough to tip the triangle forward into greater wholeness. F, remain process-oriented. Your job is not to force them to feel good, so don't try that. Just continue to be present with them, process with them, and pray with them. And again, letter G, pray for people in crisis. So that ends training module number 8. Hopefully gives you a better feel for what a crisis looks like. And I look forward to meet with you in class this week, and we'll see what questions we come up with. We'll talk to you soon.